Hello and welcome to today's video, and today I'm going to be talking about something of which I've actually noticed a pattern of over the last sort of few years. Now obviously I'm going to ask you a question. Think about any sort of roller coaster you've heard about being built over the past, I don't know, probably 10 years, 10 years. Out of all of them, how many roller coasters do you think actually have at least one vertical loop on them? Now if you don't know what a vertical loop is, and I'd be surprised if you didn't, but a vertical loop obviously is the iconic teardrop shaped element that literally just does a massive incline up and then just flips you back down. It's probably the most iconic element on a roller coaster. Now obviously these are probably one of the many elements that put roller coasters on the map for being very iconic and making most people to ride them. I'm pretty sure they're one of the first types of inversions as well. They've existed since like the experimental days of like the early 1900s, when they were just like loads of people trying to experiment with old wooden coasters, give them different vertical loops. Obviously back in those days, vertical loops were completely different than the ones we find now, because they were completely circular. Now if you're wondering what the reason is for vertical loops being teardrop shaped, it's because if they were completely circular, too many forces would be exerted on your head and neck. Because obviously if it's completely circular, it means that all the forces are being sustained while you're going through the loop. So that's why they're teardrop shaped, so that it goes like a sort of gradual ascent up, and by the time it gets to the top of the vertical loop it gets tighter and then it descends back down smoothly. So it's not painful. It's basically like whiplash if it was completely circular. Now roller coasters with vertical loops, especially popular in the 1970s, 80s and 90s, basically can probably guarantee that any sort of extreme thrill coaster back in the day would have at least one vertical loop. Like aerodynamics, they became popular because they built what are known as looping coasters. Things such as Viper at Six Flags Magic Mountain, which has, I think, quite a large number of vertical loops. It has a very iconic roller coaster. And obviously companies like Schwarzkopf as well, they became famous by building their looping coaster model as well. Things such as Olympia Looping, which is obviously the world's largest travelling fairground coaster as far as I'm aware. And it is obviously absolutely brilliant. The element itself is very iconic. But the reason I'm talking about this in the video today, because I've noticed over the last few years as roller coasters become more and more advanced, we've noticed a pattern that less roller coasters that actually get built have no vertical loops. Now obviously this might not seem like a big issue. I'm not saying it's like a bad thing that they don't have vertical loops, but it's something I'm pointing out. Because it's quite weird. It's like, think of over the last 10 years when you see roller coasters getting built. And obviously the only roller coasters I can think of nowadays that have vertical loops that get built are relocated coasters. So you might be thinking Sick at Flamingo Land, which even though it's marketed when it opened last year as being brand new, as many of us enthusiasts actually know, Sick was obviously relocated originally from Hopi Hari in Brazil. It was originally supposed to open in 2012 at that park. Obviously that was quite a long time ago. But I think the reason we're not seeing a lot of vertical loops now is because a lot of companies, manufacturers and theme parks are trying to like sort of shake things up a bit and add crazier and newer elements to like roller coasters. That's why you see a lot of rides now with things such as multi-pass launches with switch tracks, things like Pantheon or Tutatis, or even like family coasters are doing that now. And it's even things like the Smile at Alton Towers that has the most inversions in the world with 14, and not a single one of them are a vertical loop. It is obviously mental how it's like going. The only roller coaster I can think of at Alton Towers that has a vertical loop is Nemesis. Now a lot of you might be saying in the comments, oh, Nemesis is technically getting a brand new vertical loop. Well, I get you what you mean by that. If they're rebuilding Nemesis, that means that that's getting a new loop, but if it's already adding onto an already existing ride, that doesn't count. So even though the new track obviously is brand new track, but if it's literally just extending from a ride which had been mostly demolished a few months ago, if you get what I'm saying, then it's not technically counting as a brand new element to the ride. That's the only, obviously, there's only like a few roller coasters in this country I can think of that have vertical loops. There's Nemesis in both Nemesis, Colossus, Sick, Kumali, Odyssey. So there's only like a few I can think of off the top of my head, and also Millennium at Fantasy Island as well. Now, obviously, like I said earlier, this might be the reason because a lot of manufacturers now are basically attempting to build a lot more weirder elements on roller coasters that exert more airtime and hang time and negative g-forces, things like that. Like RMC, for example, they've been building roller coasters since 2011. Even though most of them are hybrid coasters, which obviously have wooden support structures, so I don't know how they pull vertical loop off on one of those. Not a single one of their roller coasters have a vertical loop. Not even like any of the RMC Raptors, which are fully steel. Now, I'd get why they wouldn't build a vertical loop on any of their hybrid coasters, because even though most of them are technically steel, if they've got the wooden support structure, I'd imagine it'd be quite difficult to actually pull off a vertical loop on one of those. Like, apart from the experimental days of the early 1900s, the only wooden roller coaster I can think of to ever have a vertical loop is Son of Beast at Kings Island. Obviously, we all know what happened to that. It literally that ride had its vertical loop removed. I think only a couple of years before it closed permanently in 2009. Obviously, that became infamous for being the only wooden roller coaster in the world at the time, obviously, with a vertical loop, and also the world's tallest and fastest wooden roller coaster. But because they tried to do that, it became so rough and painful, according to the guests who have ridden it. I'm going off topic here. I'm talking about the disappearance of vertical loops on roller coasters. Now, it seems that a lot of manufacturers, a vertical loop is obviously what made a lot of companies sort of take off with their rides and their products. Companies like B&M, Intamin, Mac, Vekoma. Obviously, Vekoma, they're famous for installing their original boomerang models, which obviously, as a default layout, came with both a cobra roll and a vertical loop. There's like dozens of them around the world. But it's really weird that vertical loops are disappearing like this. This begs the question, will it come full circle back one day and they'll start installing more classic elements on roller coasters? Because, I don't know, it might be the case. I want to thank you all very much for watching this video, and if you enjoyed it, then please make sure to like and subscribe, and comment what you'd like to see in the next video. Bye!